coverage you can count on. Way 31 Midday News starts now.
Right now, you are taking a look at video of Air Force Two as it landed at Huntsville. That's Vice President Mike Pence as he deplaned, went into the crowd there in the Rocket City, making his way toward the Space and Rocket Center. I wanted to spend some time, though, obviously, with the people that had gathered to see him.
And right now, we want to take you live to the inside of the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. That's where Vice President Mike Pence is right now. He's leading the 5th National Space Council meeting. That's going to be happening here shortly. He's, of course, expected to speak within the next hour or so. Thanks so much for joining us for Way 31 News at midday. I'm Melissa Martin.
And I'm Bill Young. This morning, Way 31 has team coverage of the Vice President's visit. We have 2 reporters inside the Space and Rocket Center covering the Vice President's speech, another reporter along I-565 monitoring traffic, and the 4th at the airport where the Vice President landed a short time ago.
We want to kick things off with Way 31's Dan Schaefer, who's one of the crews that we have inside the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. Dan, tell us exactly what's happening right now. I know I'm sure a lot of anticipation building up as Vice President Mike Pence kicks off his visit to Huntsville.
Well, that is exactly right, Alyssa and Bill. Thanks again. We are joining you live here from the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. So far, no indication that Vice President Pence is actually in the building. We do know he landed, as you mentioned, at about 10 o'clock this morning at Huntsville International Airport. But so far, we have not seen him in the Davidson Center. You can see over my shoulder where that meeting of the National Space Council will take place, the white tablecloths there at the table. Appropriately enough, right under the command module of this giant Saturn V rocket in the Davidson Center here at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. By the way, this National Space Council was first established in 1989. It was disbanded in 1993, brought back to life, as it were, in 2017 by now President Trump. That many saw as President Trump's commitment not only to the U.S. space program, but America's leadership role in space exploration. Certainly good news for all the myriad of space exploration and aerospace industries here at Huntsville and across North Alabama. The big question now is what comes out of this meeting? Well, some have said that perhaps the administration is a little bit disappointed in the slow progress of the SLS, the Space Launch System, the next rocket which will take astronauts to the moon and beyond. Perhaps Pence will announce that he would like to see astronauts on the moon as soon as 2024. That's only 5 years away. That may be a little bit of an aggressive schedule for the folks at NASA. We'll just have to wait and see. As you mentioned, Alyssa, that the Vice President rather, will speak to us in about an hour after this meeting gets underway and wraps up. We'll have that for you here on Way 31 News.
All right, Dan, thanks so much. And now to Way 31's Stephen Dilsizian. He's live outside Huntsville International Airport. He's been staked out since 5 o'clock this morning for our morning newscast. So, Stephen, you were there when Air Force Two touched down. Talk to us a little bit about the Vice President's arrival.
Yeah, that's right, Bill. The Air Force Two landed just around 9:50 this morning here in Huntsville in this private terminal that they're really trying to clean up right now and get things cleaned up here. Now, Huntsville, it was home to many fans out here, and Vice President Mike Pence, as he left the plane, was greeted by many supporters. Now, among the first people to meet the Vice President was Madison County Commission Chairman Dale Strong. He was the first one to meet him at the bottom of those stairs. Vice President Pence was in no rush after getting off the plane. He made sure to meet each and every one of those supporters out there, taking pictures, signing things like shirts and hats, and then he was escorted by multiple vehicles where he's headed to the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. Now, a lot of fans that waited after Vice President Mike Pence left were able to get an exclusive tour of the inside of the plane that Vice President Pence was in, so that was something neat and cool. Now they're trying to really clean things up here at the airport. Reporting live in Huntsville, Stephen Dilsizian, Way 31 News.
And as we mentioned, we do have a team of reporters covering Vice President Mike Pence's visit to the Rocket City. Right now, we want to check in with Way 31's Sydney Martin. She is live along I-565 this morning at the Space and Rocket Center, where traffic is shut down this morning for Vice President Mike Pence's arrival to the Space and Rocket Center. Sydney, tell us exactly what you're seeing when it comes to traffic in that area.
Alyssa, 565 is reopened this morning. If you actually take a look behind me, you can see there's still a state trooper sitting on the side of the road watching traffic, monitoring it since Vice President Mike Pence is expected to come back through this area later this afternoon when he heads back to the airport. Now take a look at this video of his motorcade headed from the airport to the Space and Rocket Center around 10:15 this morning. I-565 eastbound was shut down when his motorcade came through. Months of planning between local, state, and federal agencies took place to keep the vice president safe during his trip to Huntsville. Law enforcement only shut down the eastbound lanes of the interstate for the motorcade, and westbound traffic was not impacted. Huntsville police, along with state troopers and the Madison County Sheriff's Office, have been in the area for hours this morning. They actually still are in the area. You can see in this video they had entrances and exits blocked off while the vice president traveled from the airport on the interstate. However, there was no traffic backup in this area, and the road was reopened shortly after he arrived at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. Now, Vice President Mike Pence is expected to travel westbound to head back to the airport this afternoon. We're expecting those lanes of traffic to be impacted. However, it's unknown this morning if the eastbound lanes will also be impacted. Live in Huntsville, Sydney Martin, Way 31 News.
And our team coverage continues right now with Way 31's Greg Privet.
Greg is also inside the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, where the vice president will speak now within about an hour or so. Greg, tell us exactly where you are inside the building and sort of what you're seeing right now.
Alyssa and Bill, today's visit from Vice President Mike Pence underscores just how important space exploration is to Huntsville. For 6 decades, NASA and the space program have had a massive impact on the local economy. About 3,000 jobs at NASA itself, another 3,000 at contractors, and thousands more beyond that. The Huntsville area is heavily dependent on government spending. More than half of Huntsville's economy is dependent on that spending. So people here today will be very interested to hear what the Vice President has to say. Reporting live in Huntsville, Greg Privet, Way 31 News.
And of course, as we all know, NASA has a very long and very rich history with the city of Huntsville. And today, the Marshall Space Flight Center is just one of 3 main NASA hubs in the entire country.
It was in 1960 when the Marshall Space Flight Center first opened. Since then, the center has provided mission-critical design, development of the launch system, and exploration for space missions.
And you know, many of Saturn rockets and their lunar roving vehicle were created in the Rocket City at the Marshall Space Flight Center. Dr. Werner von Braun led up the creation of those rockets.
Today, rocket engines are still created at Marshall, and the International Space Station is also monitored from right here in the Rocket City. And the summer also marks the 50th anniversary of the historic Apollo 11 mission to the moon. To mark the special occasion, the U.S. Space and Rocket Center is in the process of sprucing up their iconic Saturn V rocket replica that, of course, sits on the side of I-565 at the Space and Rocket Center. The $1.3 million project included washing the steel structure, scraping and repairing rust spots, priming and repainting the entire almost 400-foot rocket. It's been a pretty challenging job that's been made more difficult by Alabama's weather.
This is the first week we've been on this job. We've actually stayed 7 days in a row, so since December.
Workers say they are confident they will meet their deadline of April 1st, and this local landmark will look better than ever, ready for her close-up in July. And of course, we will have team coverage for you all day long right here on Way 31 News of Vice President